Next, I would like to introduce our third speaker for today, Maria McDonald. Maria has had 40 years' experience as a registered nurse. 15 of those years more recently were in haematology, where she found her true passion. During this time working in haematology, she completed her Nursing in Cancer certificate through the College of Nursing. This course had an elective component to it, and Maria's choice was to focus on myeloma. In the last 5 years, Maria has moved her career focus from nursing to pastoral care. She completed the education needed to gain employment in this field and now works as a pastoral care practitioner at Calvary Mater, Newcastle, which is predominantly a cancer hospital, including a haematology unit. She has a grown-up family of 3 boys, all in their 20s, and is currently enjoying her empty nest with her husband. Today, Maria will be talking about caring for the carer. Thank you, Maria.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, to everyone who's tuned in today, and thank you to Tina for your introduction. Thank you also to Rachel and Juliet and Myeloma Australia for giving me this opportunity to speak today. The topic I've been asked to speak on is self-care, and specifically to be mindful or focused on the self-care needs of those who are carers, those who care for people with myeloma. So before I start, I'd like to say it's important that if anything that we talk about today brings up issues for you or makes you feel uncomfortable, please contact Myeloma Australia. There are people there on the end of the phone that are waiting and ready to help. So when we look at the work that carers do, we find that there are varying types of roles and varying levels of demands on carers. This can be anything from helping out for an hour up to being a full-time carer. It can be a paid position or an unpaid position. It could be a family member. In particular, it could be a spouse or a partner. The information today hopefully will touch on most caring roles in some way, but there is a focus on what we call a primary carer. A primary carer is the one who is dependent upon most when multiple carers are involved. So it's the first go-to person, other than the person with myeloma, who is helping support. It's the organiser. If the person with myeloma is struggling to organise themselves, it's the person who does the majority of the organising. So I'd just like to look at when someone's given a diagnosis of myeloma, there is often an emotional response, not just by the person with the diagnosis, but also for those around them. The response may be possibly one of shock, one of feeling of uncertainty about the future. And the path the person that has the diagnosis on prior to the diagnosis changes. And change like this one will always bring about an array of feelings. Then as you, the person you are caring for, walk this new path together with the support of the medical teams and hopefully those around you, you may find it to be a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and not just up and down. It can be slow at times and be really fast at times. So myeloma is largely an ongoing, or to use the correct medical term, a chronic disease that fluctuates. So in the beginning, there may be, of the diagnosis, there may be a very big help response around you. But that may fade over time, and it just leaves you, the carer, and the person you're caring for, to live through things like the tension felt every time there's a blood test, or the waiting to see if this round of treatment is going to have the desired effect. As a primary carer for someone with myeloma, you will possibly go through similar, if not the same, feelings and thoughts as those with the disease. In fact, your focus on them means you live their ups and downs as well as your own ups and downs. So I want to first of all acknowledge some of the feelings and those experiences that those who are carers may have when they find themselves in a caring role. And very often it's a role that's not of choice. Now, I'd like to note that some what we're going to look at next. Some may feel some of these, one of them, two of them. There'll be a variety in looking at what we feel when we're in this type of situation. So, but please be sure that later in the talk, I'll have some strategies for self-care to help with a lot of this. So let's have a look at what you may be experiencing or feeling. So the first one up there on the list is grief and loss and some sadness. So transitioning to a new normal, a new way of being, one you didn't ask for. Your vision of the future changed and all out of your control. This is loss. What if the person I'm caring for dies? You don't have to have someone die to feel grief. The thought of it can bring on that feeling. You may feel angry and frustrated. Why us? Why me? Frustrations with navigating the healthcare system, and that can be really, really frustrating. Your stress levels and your anxiety levels may be heightened. You know, as a patient or a carer, it could mean changes in employment, reducing time at work and therefore income, and all the worries that come with that decreased income. If your identity is largely through your work and now you're only working part-time or you can't work at all, who am I? You know, if I'm not a teacher, who am I? If I'm not a lawyer, who am I? If I'm not the breadwinner, who am I? The other, you may feel guilt. Guilt over being at times angry that this is happening. Guilt that you're struggling to meet the needs as a carer. You know, all those needs that are being demanded of you and you're just struggling to meet all of them. And then you feel guilty if you can't meet them. Am I feeling burdened? And now I feel guilty about feeling burdened. The next one down is you may feel alone or isolated or helpless. The focus, quite understandably, is on the person with the myeloma. But what happens if things don't go to plan? As a carer, you have no control over this. How do I manage these feelings of helplessness? I'd just like to share a statistic with you that I was surprised at when I was doing some research on this. And across the board, across Australia, the whole population, and this is not just myeloma, 1 in 8 Australians are carers in some way. So that's a large part of the population. So maybe sometimes when you're feeling alone, just remind yourself that there are people out there who are living through similar circumstances to what you are. You may feel trapped and overwhelmed when it's just all too much and I can't find my feet. I've lost my anchor. I can't put thoughts together. I'm so overwhelmed, I just can't think logically. Your faith may be challenged. If you have a strong faith, it may be challenged by this, you know. I and we have been good people and followed the teachings of my faith. Why would God do this to me and to us? You may find that there's physical changes go on. You may have changes in appetite, might have difficulty sleeping. You might be tired all the time. Some carers, they may have some positive things, positive feelings around caring for someone. You know, it suddenly gives them a very strong sense of purpose, or they get a very strong sense of connection. So some people do have positive come out of becoming carers. So you may have felt all of these, or some at some stage, or maybe a few, or none of them. The important thing is to recognise these as feelings and to know that you are normal. So we know that we are normal, which is the top sentence there, or comment up the top there. So with the fluctuations that can come with myeloma and hopefully the years to be lived with the disease, there's a need for resilience as a carer. To have resilience, you must ensure good self-care is a normal part of your world. Self-care is not something that comes naturally to a lot of us. It needs attention and it needs to be built up as a habit. So the important bit is to know that you are normal, that to continue on as a carer, you're probably going to need some resilience, and that there's help out there with self-care. So what does self-care look like? Now, the Australian Centre for Grief and Bereavement, this is their definition of self-care. So self-care is a very active and powerful choice to engage in activities that maintain an optimal level of overall health. This includes not just physical, but also psychological, emotional, social, and spiritual components of an individual's well-being. Another statistic that I found out while I was doing research is that, and this is across the board, not just myeloma, carers are 40% more likely to suffer from chronic health issues than the rest of the population. And that's a very big percentage of carers to be living with chronic health issues. So we have the grief and bereavement definition. The World Health Organization also has a definition for it, which just gives weight to how important self-care is. It's a little more academic and technical, but put more simply for us in our daily existence, taking care of yourself is the most powerful way to begin to take care of others. We need to remember that when we are carers, that this is a marathon and it's not a sprint. So we could sit back and think about self-care, and we could make a practical list of common activities that would normally be seen as self-care activities, like going for a walk, spending some time reading, gardening, patting the dog. The list is endless because self-care activities have no limit. The key is knowing what works for you. The key is awareness of ourselves. Oh, I just lost my clicker. Yeah. So sorry about that. To self-care, we need to have awareness of ourselves. We need to know what nourishes me, what recharges my batteries, what drains me, what gets me out of bed in the morning. When am I less effective? Where in my body do I feel stress? You know, if I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, do I get nauseated? Or do I just feel like I'm heavy chested? Where do I feel that in my body? How do I know I'm stressed? So just thinking about ourselves and these types of questions can increase our awareness about ourselves. And the last one there that says, how do I know I'm stressed? I'd just like to take a couple of moments just to talk about stress in general. Stress has two sides to it. It has a positive side and a negative side. We need some stress in our lives to develop our coping skills, but too much or prolonged stress can have a detrimental effects on our well-being. And it's getting the balance that matters, because we can't get away from it. It is going to be there. So it's about how do we get that balance. So this is where the good news comes in about our feelings and our responses and our stress levels. We can influence them to have some balance through really good self-care. And so in the next 3 slides, I'm going to give you some strategies on how to do that, because I'd much rather empower you with some strategies than sit with a list of things a mile long that you can just try out. First of all, recognise and increase your awareness of your reactions, which is what we were talking about just before with the questions that I had up there. Recognise what you can and can't change or control. If you can, learn how to let go of what you can't control. Now, I understand this is easier said than done, but if you can do it, you will find that you feel much less burdened. Have realistic expectations of yourself. Your world has changed and it continues to change. Living with myeloma is part of it. So include those changes and the possibility of the limitations that you now have when thinking of realistic expectations of what you can put in place for your self-care. So one of the thoughts might be, how much time can I make available for self-care? Can I allocate a whole day, or can I just do 30 minutes in the morning each morning? Or can I, for 3 mornings a week, allocate 2 hours to go out and do something for myself? Be realistic about what is possible in your own individual circumstances. Take time. Do something fun. Simply be. We live in a high expectation, fast-moving world. Give yourself permission to just be. As human beings, if we can learn to just be, it does really nourish us. Talk to people. I've learnt this. There's a thing called the rule of fives, and it makes me think of 5 fingers, but have 5 people that you know of on hand that you can talk to at any time. Now that may be talk with friends, talk with family, counsellors, as we have up there, but I would recommend that you put into that one of 5, having contact with Myeloma Australia. My understanding is there's always someone there who is willing to answer your questions and be supportive. So in those 5 that you think of to have on hand, just include Myeloma Australia. Eat healthy food, get adequate sleep and exercise. Now, if you're like me with this one, it requires a little bit of discipline. This is not one of my strong areas. So maybe with things like, for example, exercise, put something in place that can keep you accountable. Organise to walk with a friend once a week and ask them to make you accountable, to make sure you turn up on that day. Just little strategies like that can keep your eating and sleep and exercise in a good daily and weekly pattern. Be kind to yourself. If something doesn't work, try not to judge yourself. Self-talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend who is in your position. Self-talk, talk to yourself kindly. It's very important. Include humour wherever possible. Now, this is my favourite one. It's one of my big strategies personally, as well as talking to friends and having a laugh with friends. I make sure at least 3 times a year I get to some sort of comedy festival. So at the beginning of the year, I'm guaranteed I'm going to have at least 3 nights a year where I just laugh my head off. So humour is very, very antidotal to feeling down or feeling lousy. So I encourage you to look at how you can pull more humour into your life. Unless you're a funny person and there's a lot there, then that's great. Celebrate when good self-care works. Remember to pat yourself on the back. My understanding is that the Myeloma Australia website has a thing called joyful moments that you can post things on. I suggest that if you find something that works really well for you in self-care, post it on the joyful moments part of the website and share it with everyone. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. Our last one here is learn to slow your breathing, relax your body and your mind. There's quite a bit of research around this now that shows that if you can control your breathing or do some meditation, that it can be very helpful. It does not have to be complicated. It can be as simple as breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, and breathe out for the count of 4. And if you do this, just do it 10 times once a day, it can effectively slow and deepen and relax your regular breathing. So that's the 9, at least 9 suggestions that I have along strategies. What I'd like to say is that nobody knows you better than you. I would invite you to spend some time reflecting and thinking about what works for you, what has worked in the past, and what have I always felt would work but haven't tried yet. Be flexible in trying things out. to see if they work. If self-care is something that you've never been focused on before, then there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Try to see it as an adventure. What I do know is if you can find what works for you, not just you will benefit, but those around you will also feel the benefit. And my last slide has Post-it notes all over it because I'm a Post-it note girl and I live by Post-it notes. And if I didn't have them, I wouldn't know where I was or what I was doing. So I wanted to give you what I would call a bit of fun homework simply because it involves Post-it notes. And I would say within the next day or so, after having listened to this talk, I encourage you to sit in your comfy chair, go and sit under your favourite tree, or after some meditation, spend some time reflecting on what nourishes you, what makes you feel like you, and see if you can come up with 3 really realistic ideas for personal self-care. Write them on a Post-it note and stick it on the fridge. Look at it daily and explore the implementation of these ideas. Are they doable? And if so, go ahead and just jump in. My time is up for talking, and I think, I'm not sure whether we have enough time for questions, but Tina will let us know if anyone has one. But before the questions, I'd like to reiterate what I said at the beginning, and that is, if any of this presentation has brought up issues for you or made you feel uncomfortable, please contact Myeloma Australia. They are there to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. What an informative talk today. Some great self-care tips there for everybody. And thanks very much for suggesting that people use our Joyful Moments campaign. What a wonderful idea. I do have a few questions here for you. We might just do the first one, just running out of time a little bit.
That's
First
okay.
question's from Tom. I can't meditate and deep breathing does nothing for me. Do you have any tips around this?
I do. People think they can't meditate or that it doesn't work because it's meditation and deep breathing exercises. Sometimes they can relieve in the moment, but they're actually a long-term strategy. You need to, it's almost like make it till you do it till you fake it till you make it. What happens is that you think it's doing nothing, and then if you actually manage to do it for, say, 4 months, for example, or 6 months, it's not that you notice the daily difference. It's when you look back and you realise, gee, I am a little bit calmer than what I used to be. So it's not necessarily a quick fix strategy. The Buddhists would tell you this is not a quick fix if you're talking about meditation. We do know that deep breathing affects the autonomic nervous system in the human body, and this is the area of the brain that controls the part of the brain that can control or influences emotional processing, hormone regulation, and perception and thoughts. So there's a science behind it in that it can work. I would just encourage you to persist with it. I know it's hard work when you don't get any immediate feedback, but it is a very good long-term strategy.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
Does that make sense?
Does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
That wraps up our session today with Maria. Thank you again for generously giving your time. We really appreciate it, Maria.
You're welcome. Thank you.